And we are live. Happy Thursday night, everyone at Sober Nation. I am here with my new friend, Tiffany. Tiffany, how are you?
Great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so for everybody who does not know Tiffany, she is an RN. She's an intuitive eating coach. She has her own practice. She helps women with disordered eating and help find their relationship with food. And she is in long-term recovery. You've been in recovery since 1998. Is that right?
Yeah.
Are you even that, like, you look very young.
So I went to treatment when I was 16, and I've been abstinent since since I was about 18 years old. So
congratulations.
So actually June 12th will be 21.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Are you even 21? Like what? A quick shout out. I want to say hi to Geraldine. I hope you're doing well, Geraldine. She has been with us her whole journey. She has 70 days sober today. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So tonight we are talking about triggers, which on Tuesday we posted a question to all of you guys and asked, what are your triggers? How do you deal with them? How do you identify them? What do you do about that icky stuff that comes up? And so I want to know for you, Tiffany, I mean, you're so far along in recovery now. What was that like for you? Mm-hmm. If you remember that far back.
It's seared into my brain.
Yeah. Well, and then we'll go to some of the comments, and a lot of people had, opinions about what their triggers were and how they dealt with them. So first of all, tell me, I said a little bit about you, but tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you dealt with triggers, what some of those were, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So for me, you talk a little bit about the work I do with food now. Mm-hmm. So food issues predated my substance use issues. Okay. I struggled with that since I was a young girl. And then in my teen years, I went through a pretty significant depression, started using, pretty hardcore substances, drinking, as much as I could get my hands on as well. But it was really more, using amphetamines and things like that brought me to my knees, right? Brought me really ready to do something about it and brought me into recovery at a really young age. So at that point, I went to treatment. I did have some instances of return to use. For some people, the term relapse, I'm trying to move away from that term because I think, can be shaming. But I did have some instances of that. So I remember pretty clearly what those triggers were like at that time. And then, as I kind of matured and grew up in recovery, there were times in my life where, I kind of struggled a little bit more than other times. And then around my relationship with food, there are definitely things that are, like emotional triggers for me today. So there's things that make me want to eat beyond fullness and want to eat in a way that doesn't feel good, right? And so now the term has kind of shifted for me more around my relationship with food. But it's still the same types of things, right? And so I think we can apply those struggles those struggles can show up in different ways and make us have an increased desire for numbing out or self-soothing, right? Regardless of where we're at in our recovery.
Well, I know and for a lot of people too, a huge trigger, especially in early recovery, is that weight gain, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, some of us do. I know when I got sober, like I think I gained about 15 pounds because my body was still trying to get like back to normal. I mean, I was undernourished. I was doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so also a lot of triggers too are rooted in specific emotions. What do you think about that? Because a lot of people too said in the poll, in the comments, that there's no such thing as triggers. And that's one thing I wanted to address. Mm-hmm. And that, we don't eliminate our emotions, but we can pay special attention to these emotional triggers, because no trigger makes us pick up a drink or a drug, right? But it's that emotional kind of, impulse that we've had for so long.
Yeah. So I think, So things that cause us a lot of pain and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them are relational. So for me, that was definitely like those instances where I did end up having a return to use was around, a relationship I had in early recovery. We ended up drinking together, and, familial relationships, so stuff that was going on with my parents and my family. And then, I love that you brought up weight gain. I put on weight in, like pre-treatment and then in treatment, right? And then
right.
got pregnant. So I had almost 100-pound spread, right?
Oh my goodness.
100-pound spread. And so, that definitely, I think, body image issues. But the biggest thing that I wanted to really bring up was harsh self-talk or a lot of shame. And so shame can come from external or internal. And it's really challenging when you're new in recovery because you've just had this period usually where, you've had use that's really extreme and you've potentially done a lot of things that you feel shame about. And so we carry that around with us. And so those types of things. And then I think other things that are about survival. So maybe you're afraid, that you aren't going to, like, financial insecurity, right? Like that you're literally not going to have a place to live, or, you lose your job, or you're not, you're applying for jobs and you're not getting them, or a potential that you're going to lose a person. And that's kind of where the relational stuff comes in, right? So survival and relational stuff. And then I would say, really that all of that, to me, the emotions that come up around it is the pattern that we're used to, the wiring. So
right.
We have this, like, the thing happen, and then we have this response to it. And a lot of times that's triggering to shame and negative or harsh self-talk, which then that's the piece that we feel like we really need to soothe or numb.
Right. And then it's just a cycle, right? I mean,
because then if you do the numbing out, whether it's with substances or maybe, a lot of people tend to go for food to kind of self-soothe or numb out, then, then you're like beating yourself up about that. Right. And then if you have weight gain on top, so it is.
I mean, it can be brutal, especially that we're our own biggest critic, I mean, I don't think I would, the way I have talked to myself, I wouldn't talk to a stranger on the street like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you're getting that externally as well, right? Like people are mad at us or
oh, sure. I mean, all the
we're kind of toxic or whatever, right? And so then we're getting the affirmation that, you're bad or there's something wrong with you, right? And
right.
There's something wrong, that we're not good enough.
It's unfortunate. I mean, I'm just going to go to some of the comments real quick. Catherine says triggers suck. Rebecca says, hi girls, celebrating 4 years of sobriety today. Congratulations, Rebecca. That's amazing. There's someone here from Seattle, which is you're
not
near
too
there.
Far. I'm in Portland. Hey, everybody.
Oh, you must be so cool. I just think people in Portland are really cool. Okay.
I mean, I like them, but
let me see. Joan says, I love y'all. There are triggers. Be aware. She's been sober since 1995. Just keep going to meetings. Never stop. Oh, hold on. The comments are rolling in. Don't pick up, not once. That's how she's done so many days. Hello. Augustine is here from Woodward, Oklahoma. Wow. Geraldine says triggers are terrible. It varies for me, family, weight, relationships, and people's judgments of me. But I'm okay with that today because of loving myself. I mean, and that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And how do you, especially like teaching women how to love yourself? What can we start doing, right, to start treating ourselves better?
Yeah, I think so. With intuitive eating, one of the principles of intuitive eating is to respect our body, and starting from a place of respect for ourselves, rather than this expectation that we're going to just, every day I'm going to wake up and be like, I love myself and I love my body and everything's great, right? So instead, how can I have respect, which a lot of times for me, that's having acceptance, it's having gratitude for my body. And it is actually treating myself with respect. So that self-care piece of, getting sleep and putting, nourishing food in my body, like actually feeding myself regularly, and really starting to listen to what do I need? What actually do I need today?
Right. I know, and I've dealt with a couple people who have experienced this when they do get sober. And I've also experienced this, that I felt like I lost out on so much time, so much work, so much money, that now I'm overcompensating for what I missed. And so don't end up taking care of myself. Don't do that self-care. And I know a lot of people experience that, because it's like, where did all this time go? I don't even remember it, right? Because I was getting drunk or high, or not doing, what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so there's an element of deserve and self-forgiveness there. So if we know that we are valuable and worthy of love and respect, and that we deserve to care for ourselves, and it's easier to make ourselves a priority. And that can be really hard early on in recovery, because you don't necessarily feel that you deserve to be well cared for, right?
Sure.
But
right.
It's so important to care for ourselves and treat ourselves with respect. And so that's where the forgiveness piece comes in. My path was that I started out in, I did go to inpatient treatment, and then I went to 12-step. And so I've worked the steps, probably like 5 times through, or 6 times through. I lost count at some point. But, a piece of that was putting myself on my, 8-step list, and the self-forgiveness piece. I mean, I'm 20 years in, and I am just now feeling like I have fully, like I really do love and care for myself the way that I deserve to be cared for. And I am able to do that because I did all of this work around forgiveness. And so there's so many ways to do that. But one of my favorites is the Ho'oponopono prayer. And it's simply, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And so I put it in the mirror, and it was like, I said that to myself every day. And then there's another affirmation that I like to say, which is the person that I was in that moment in time did the best that I could with the skills that I had. And so recognizing that maybe I felt like I didn't do my best, but with the skills that I had in that moment, I was really just trying to survive and get through it. Right.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so I did the best I could with those skills. And then, forgiveness is a gift that I give myself today. And so it's really recognizing, and I also add an element of, today I'm a different person, and I will do better. Right. And so knowing, and tomorrow maybe I'll walk outside and somebody's like ran into my car, and then, so
and it's, not here we go again,
Right. Yeah. Maybe I won't have the skills I need in that moment to be like, Zen or whatever, but,
well,
I'm doing I can, right?
Well, so how long? I know, because I've been to treatment multiple times, and I can put affirmations on my mirror and tell myself all these things until I'm blue in the face. But to actually start internalizing them, how long? I mean, when you work with people, do you see them actually start to internalize this and believe this for themselves? Because I know when I've said it before, I don't believe it.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. It has to be something that's believable. So if you start with something that's like, I'm going to be a millionaire, right? Your brain's like, nope. So that's right. Where, this affirmation that, the person I was in that moment in time, like I did the best I could with the skills that I had. That was really helpful for me, because when people would say, oh, you were doing your best. I'm like, no, I wasn't doing my best. That wasn't my best. I could have been way better. But when I looked at, well, what were the skills and tools I actually had in that moment? Then I was like, oh, in that moment, that really probably was all I could manage, right? Okay. Yeah. So then I was able to have that forgiveness. So it's got to be something that's believable, and it has to be repetitive, right? And now I actually meditate every day. It took me a really long time to get there, but I feel like also pairing it with meditation or a body movement practice, like a walk or whatever works for you. And then the last piece is it's got to be followed up with action. And so if if you believe, if you're like, I'm going to actively forgive myself, like, what does that look like? Like, if you have forgiven yourself, how would you treat yourself differently? And so we have to start doing that action before we're able, to fully believe it, right? Or before we're able to fully internalize it. We have to integrate it.
Right. I mean, it's like working out, right? I mean, it sounds like a muscle that you have to continue to work, and over time it grows.
Love is an action. So if you're taking action on it, it's not going to.
I love that. Because a lot of times, we're not gentle with ourselves, which how are we going to be gentle with other people?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to a question that was asked.
Okay.
Elquana, I think I'm saying that right, hopefully. He says, since I've been sober for 4 months, I've gained so much weight. Please advise. What do you have to say?
So in intuitive eating, we don't focus on weight loss. We focus on health interventions and new recovery. Like you said, we come in like malnourished. We come in with, like our guts sometimes are all messed up, right? Mm-hmm. We come in with an extreme amount of stress. Our hormones often are shifted around. And so for me, when I work with somebody who's newer in recovery, it's like, can we give our bodies grace and appreciate all that our bodies have been through and have done for us?
Right.
And so what does health look like? So it looks like actually eating, like what would the healthy intervention be rather than focusing on the weight, right? Like, so it looks like eating like regular nutritious meals, right?
Right.
And it looks like making food a priority in your life. And it looks like getting movement that's fun, right? Do you enjoy hiking? Do you enjoy like what feels good to your body? It also would look like taking some supplements, right? So like working with a doctor, I recommend naturopathic physicians, integrative medicine or functional medicine providers, somebody who specializes or who is very familiar with recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some supplements that you can take to give your body the things that it needs? Because it's likely that your body's just trying to get something that it needs, which might be an increase in dopamine. It might be, to reduce your stress, right? It might be that you're not getting enough folic acid or something. And so you're craving all this stuff because maybe you're not getting enough calcium. So you're eating like all the ice cream in the house. If you're craving chocolate, it might be because you're missing out on magnesium. So rather than focusing on, I've gained all this weight, what's wrong with me, right? That shaming, beating ourselves up, perpetuate the cycle. Instead, what can we do to improve our health and feel good in our bodies today as they are?
I love that. You're so well said. I'm not well spoken, okay? So just bear with me. But Brittany says, I relapsed after a month clean, shaking my head. I feel like a failure. I think for me, like those self-defeating thoughts, that can lead you back out again. I mean, what did you do right, Brittany? What were you doing right after you had a month clean? You're doing something. How would you reframe that for her?
Yeah, so I love what you said. So it's about letting go of judgment and instead getting curious. And so like you said, what were you doing right? What led up to that? So what was happening just before? How did it feel after? Like how did your body actually feel? Did that feel good to you? And did it give you something, right? Like maybe you were feeling bored and it gave you like a night of fun, right? Well, and you increase fun in your life in other ways. Or maybe you were feeling a lot of stress. And so what's causing the stress? Can you reduce that stress or manage that stress in another way? So really looking at the underlying causes, and that requires a lot of compassion and a lot of curiosity.
I know for me, a big one was boredom. I mean, when I was in a sober living house, a halfway house, or even when I moved out, I was so, I got, if I was home on a Friday night or a Saturday night and I got bored, I felt like I was missing out. And so that fear automatically spurred that impulse of, oh my God, what am I going to do? I need to go do something. Right. And Mike, he commented, he said, self-discipline for me, I knew what was bad and keep telling myself no to it. That's a great way. I mean, that's a good, if you want to go that way.
So for some people, like that, I think that's about boundaries, right? So for some people, setting a boundary for yourself is great, right? And a lot of times what I would have talked to people about is the idea of like trying to think through, am I going to be happy that I did this later, right? And then if not, like, would I rather wait a day? Like I can wait, I can stay sober for one more day, right? And then tomorrow if I still want to use, right? Or whatever it is. But for other people, I think sometimes the saying, no, you can't do that, then the little rebel comes out like,
of course. Hello.
Like then you get kind of the ethics, like, forget it. I'm just gonna, and so sometimes kind of, it just depends. You have to really know your own personality there and see, and see what works for you there. But I think looking at the underlying causes is really, for me, the thing that's the most sustainable long-term and preventative, most helpful in terms of prevention.
Okay. So why, and I know you mentioned it in the beginning a little bit, but why don't you like the word relapse?
Okay. So, yeah. So there's a lot of shaming language in the recovery community.
We just talked about this last week with Veronica. So I love that we're bringing this up again. It always circulates around here. So, okay, go on.
Well, and I just feel like it's, we've just had an example of somebody said, like, it's been a month, I relapsed, and now I feel like such a failure, right?
Yeah.
And so if reframing it in a way that is like, this is something that does happen. It happened for me. So I was a month in, and I had a, episode of like weekend return to use, and then got sober again, found out I was pregnant immediately.
Okay.
And I had all this guilt and shame, because I didn't realize I was pregnant, but I had used when I was pregnant. Yeah. And then I did stay sober throughout the pregnancy, and when my daughter was just a couple months old. So I do have a 21-year-old daughter, believe it or not.
Wait, hold on.
I know.
You have a 21-year-old daughter. I can't right now.
It's crazy. Okay. She's getting married. It's crazy. Anyway, so she, she's getting married on July 18th, coming right up. Okay. And she's like a business owner. Well, anyway,
congratulations to her. She's never seen you drink, never seen you do drugs, anything.
Yeah. So when she was just a little infant, I had a week period of return to use. And the thing is that now I've been sober, for almost 21 years. And so it doesn't mean that. So I feel like relapse is such a it's just such a harsh term, and it is associated with shame. Right. And so we have this and the more we shame ourselves, you don't want to go back to meetings a lot of times, or you don't want to tell people that, in your life. Right. So it's kind of this I'm going to hide and,
when I relapsed, people in my community called me relapse Tory because there was 2 Tories. And I was like, how brutal is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did it make you feel welcome and like you wanted to come back,
Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I think, each person can make a choice for themselves. But for me, I'm trying to be more, I'm trying to minimize the shame factor. And I want to contribute to that.
I love it. So you say return to use. Mm-hmm. Return to use. Okay.
Yeah. And that's just that's just what I've seen as kind of the acceptable replacement. I feel like there's this we're kind of in this young age of trying to learn what language works and how it's important. And so, we'll see that term might shift in the future, but
I think it'll continue to evolve. Over time. So Debbie says she has started growing a garden.
Awesome.
Gives her exercise and a reason to eat healthy. I want to do that. I wish I had room at my house.
That sounds beautiful.
Let's see. Andy says failure is a terrible word. I use it all the time with regards to myself. Failure is an absolute. It's very black and white. Andy, I think this goes to show that you need to practice what you preach, because he says it all the time to himself.
Mm-hmm. So I have a trick for that.
Oh, tell us.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's so many, if you look at the Wright brothers, how many times did they fail, right? Before they flew, right? So that's just part of making change or making something happen in your life. But the trick is that when it's painful for our brain kind of shuts down and wants to avoid it, right? And so if you're I failed at that, right? And then your brain, you just kind of go into this default mode. I don't know if anybody knows about Mel Robbins, probably do, but she talks about the default mode. And it's basically where wiring in your brain gets triggered and you go into that shame, negative, talking and all of that. But if you celebrate the awareness of that word, then it's actually going to be a lot easier to change it. So every time you catch yourself saying, oh, I failed at that, or I'm such a failure, if you catch yourself, you actually just had this moment where you can make change happen. And so it's oh my gosh, I just thought of that. I realized. So you're actually doing a really great thing when you realize that you've just said the thing.
So you're just bringing awareness to this word. I said failure again, right?
Yeah. So then when you say it and you're like, oh, okay, oh, I realized, I remembered, I just said that. And I remember that I want to change that. And so again, we want to let go of any judgment and we don't want it to be a bad thing that we said it. Instead, we're like, oh, how can I reframe this? So we can actually change that wiring. But it requires the awareness. So we want to be like, oh, good, I have an opportunity to change this right now. Right. Yeah. Same with should. Oh, that's such a like,
oh God, should. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then we want to be like, oh, I said I should. Okay. So what's a different thing? Like, oh, I should exercise. Instead, I could say like, oh, it would feel good to go outside and get some movement, or I'd like to start to move my body more, right? Rather than I should do that.
Right. I love that. And I should, okay, just kidding. Josephine says she is sitting at a meeting now waiting for it to start. She's speaking for the first time in 3 years, but she had to check in for a minute. That's awesome. Thank you for being here, Josephine. Yeah. And a lot of people in here are talking about food, and it obviously is, we have you here. Tina says she's trying to watch for calories, but at least she's not drinking them now. Let's just be clear that Tiffany helps people with intuitive eating, right? I mean, you don't count calories, you don't any of that. It's hunger cues, right?
Yeah, so it's all about healing your relationship with food, becoming more in tune to your body. So we let go of any shoulds, any judgment. We let go of, we don't count calories. We don't focus on weight. Instead, we focus on what is my body telling me? What does my body need? And then we look at things like you said, hunger, fullness signals. And instead we look at, like if I have an increased desire for food, what's going on underneath that, right? So people say, oh, I'm just an emotional overeater, and it's such this like shaming thing. But actually, if you are using food to soothe, there's a reason, right? So what is it?
Sure, it's an underlying emotion, right?
Yeah. So what do I need? How do I feel? And what do I need? And we actually look at increasing satisfaction with food. And then we start to get into respect your body, movement, and, honoring your health by using, gentle nutrition and taking care of yourself by sleeping and, all of that good stuff.
So and I know there's a lot in the comments too of the question we asked about stress is a huge trigger. And how, people get overworked, overstressed, and how do we manage our stress, and how can we do it with food?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So mindset is so important. And I think, really what we're seeing in the research is that shame and stigma do contribute to negative health outcomes. And so it's actually harmful to your health to have shame. And that's a way that we're, really contributing to our stress. A lot of times is that like negative self-talk. So I'd say, first thing is like work on that piece, right? Like really letting go of that self-judgment and that harsh stuff. Because if you say you're late to work and then you have a stressful day at work, and then on top of that, you're like, I just didn't do a good job and I showed up late and what's wrong with me and I'm such a failure, and all of that. Like then we're actually negatively impacting our health on top of that. But stress is something that we can either reduce our stress by saying no to things, by, crossing things off of our list, right? By, maybe you have a job that's just killing you. Like maybe a different job would be better, right? Sometimes we can't, at one point I was a single mom working and going to nursing school. My stress was like here.
Hello. Yeah.
So sometimes we can't do that. And so in that case, or with the stress that we can't reduce or minimize, then we're going to really want to manage that. And so it's, all the things like yoga and meditation and getting movement, right? Exercise is great for stress, but it's got to come from a place of self-care rather than like, I should,
Right. Of course. There's that word again.
Totally. All of those things. And then around food, I really think letting go of any judgment around food. Now that doesn't mean that we don't use discernment. We can, discern what foods make us feel good. And, but if you're finding yourself eating like tortilla chips and watching Netflix every night and you're, going to school and have a super stressful job or whatever it is, that makes sense. Right. And so what are again, it's kind of getting into your body, like, oh, what would actually feel good to my body right now? Maybe I'll take a bath before I do the Netflix and binge and see how that feels, right? But letting go of any of that judgment around food, I think is really, really critical.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know, especially when I'm super stressed and when I'm like, oh, crap, I'm on the run. Like I gotta go to like Chipotle or, Wendy's, whatever, I feel even worse about myself,
Yeah.
So taking that time to actually like make a decent meal, do what I need to do for myself, take a deep breath, really can help. Even though I still have that in the back of my mind, like, oh shit, I gotta like be at here. I gotta be on this Facebook Live at 9:00, so.
Totally. Yeah. Food prep is so helpful, I think, and again, we don't want it to become a should, but for me, I was just talking to somebody right before this. She's a busy mom and owns a business and, just like me, we were talking about like, oh, when I make a pot of soup, like I just make a giant pot and then I put some in the freezer and then I have it later or whatever. I'm in Portland, so it's cold here a lot, but maybe it's not soup, but could be some other meal. And so, it does require an investment, either a time investment or a financial investment for foods that are, maybe more, I don't know what kind of grocery stores you have there, but here we have Whole Foods and we call it whole paycheck.
Oh, we call it that too. So
okay, yeah. And so it's like, it's going to be an investment one way or another. So it's something that I do choose for myself. I realize that that's a position of privilege. Not everyone is in that position. And in that case, like if you're in a position where all there is like the fast food, or you genuinely don't have time, again, we don't want it to be a should. But knowing that what we put in our bodies does impact us, and the more we're able to eat like nutrient-dense foods that are less processed, the better we're going to feel.
Well, there's a couple good comments that just came through. Geraldine says, I'm loving this meeting. Great stuff. We love you, Geraldine. Leslie likes to use the HALT strategy to check in with herself. That's a good one. That's a good like acronym. And I like to think of it as a recovery cliche because a lot of people say it, but hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're all four of those things, it's probably like a red flag.
Yeah. I mean, for me, any of them, if I'm any of those things, I feel unbalanced and out of whack, and I'm going to have, less of those tools, like I mentioned at the beginning, and I think what I do that's an extension of that is really saying like, how do I feel? What do I need? And I have an alarm on my phone, and that can be anywhere from I feel hungry, I feel antsy. Like you might see me right now, I'm kind of starting to squirm in my seat a little bit because I've been sitting a lot today and my body's like, oh my gosh, it's time to get moving, right? So how do I feel in this moment? I'm feeling like I'm ready to move. And so what I need when we're done here, I need to get up and stretch or move around or go for a walk or whatever it is, But I love that acronym because sometimes, especially new in recovery, we may not have that connection to our bodies and to our emotions. And so that HALT message is like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Right. It takes a while to build that connection back because we've just been running whatever feels good for so long. Mm-hmm. And Tina says, I start my days over as many times as needed to in order to change my attitude. I love that because I do that all the time because sometimes I get pissed off at work or, and I don't want my whole day to be like that. So
that's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I think we learned a lot tonight. What do you have anything else that you want to add? I'm going to put like the link to and tag your Facebook and put the link to your website in here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I would say the only other thing that I don't think we really got to, I'm kind of looking at my notes here, is really a sense of community. And so you mentioned the HALT, our listener watcher mentioned HALT, and the loneliness piece. I think that's so important when we're feeling rejected. And that's one of the reasons that relationships are so hard, right? We can have that sense of rejection. When we feel lonely, it can feel like you're just out in the woods by yourself, and it's hard to really have perspective on things. It's hard to feel like things are going to be okay. And so, what are the ways that we can start to build community for ourselves in whatever pathway you're on? And then also like, what are the ways we can really give ourselves connection? And so whether that's like meditation or if it's, I love using the 5 love languages. And so, taking that quiz and then recognizing like, these are my love languages. How can I not only do this in my relationships with other people, but how can I do this in my relationship with myself? So it becomes this like deep self-care practice. And so, we can build that connection, especially for people who are like empaths or they're like I can't think of the word, like an introvert, you know.
No, right.
You know, you might need downtime, but then you might end up feeling lonely too. And so really, I think community is so important. And you guys are clearly helping here.
I mean, I have a friend, one of my best friends, and she lives across the country, and, you know, I talk to her all the time, but she's all by herself. She's such an introvert, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have to go out and do something because you're lonely, you're alone all the time, you're by yourself. And that can be such a catalyst for return to use. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, it's so detrimental to our health, and especially being with other people, right? I mean, that just in itself can help us. It can help depression. It can help anything. So, yeah. Well, anyway.
Thank you guys for what you do here. It's clearly building community and offering support in a way that's really accessible. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being here, and hopefully we'll have you back. I hope we have you back on because you were a wealth of information. So
I'd love to be on again. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. And everyone, thank you so much for being here. As always, we love having you here. We love being on here on Thursday night. If you need help, just send us a message. You can email me, Tori@sobernation.com, TORI. We're always here for you, always posting things. And we will see you again next week, another Thursday night at 9 p.m. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.